leaders in Roanoke Rapids Graded School District are doing to strengthen their MTSS practice and driving early literacy gains in the process. So if I could figure out the clicker, with us today is Superintendent Dr. Julie Thompson.
Good morning.
And Chrissy Martin, who is the Director of MTSS and Exceptional Children. And I am Courtney. I'm the VP of Strategic Accounts with Branching Minds. So on today's agenda, we're going to start off by talking about literacy trends across the country, and then what we see playing out here in North Carolina. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how Roanoke Rapids has leveraged MTSS practices to build and scale literacy best practice. So I'm going to kick us off and then turn it over to Chrissy and Julie. But did you all want to say anything before we get started?
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so we're going to start off because it's bright and early in the morning with a little bit of interactiveness. So raise your hand if your district has enacted new literacy legislation in the past 5 years. Or new literacy practices in the past 5 years. So most of us here in the room, I think everybody. Raise your hand if your district requires the adoption of evidence-based literacy practices. I see some inquisitive looks, like, yes, of course we do. Raise your hand if your district requires the usage of literacy screeners. Mm-hmm. And raise your hand if your district is creating intervention plans for students who are not reading at grade level. Everybody. We're doing great here in North Carolina. Across the country, we're seeing a turning tide in NAEP scores, where we're starting to see a little bit of a flat line here. And so because of that, as a result of that, 40 states across the country and DC have adopted new literacy legislation, and North Carolina was one of the first to really jump on board with that. Common components that we're seeing of this work, which we are doing here, are really focused on strong professional learning, evidence-based instructional materials, literacy screeners, intervention plans, and family communications. All of which, as we start digging in a little bit to today's presentation, are all components of an effective multi-tiered systems of support practice. Common challenges that we see in my work, I work with districts across the country, not just here in North Carolina, but I am based in Raleigh, so this is my home and where I like to spend my time. But we see that across our work with over 400 districts, every school is an island. They're all kind of doing their own work, although the district involvement in that looks a little different depending on the districts. We see often that there's missing tiered supports. There are misaligned teams, insufficient resourcing, inadequate training, and lacking infrastructure. So which of those challenges, we're going to do a little turn and talk, resonate most with your experience? Oh.
Every school is an island.
Every school is an island? How is that resonating for you?
Because you see so different achievements across the district.
So differing achievement across the district. We have some schools that are really doing it and doing it well, and other schools that might be struggling a little bit. Yes?
I'm talking to misaligned teams.
Misaligned teams.
Yeah, there's lots of adults who really want good outcomes
Mm-hmm.
and kind of are in their lane without kind of thinking about how to work all together.
Anyone else? Chrissy, is there something you wanted to
No,
add?
I was just saying that we were going to talk about team and structures a little later.
All right, so what does this work look like in North Carolina? And with this, I'm going to kick it to Julie.
So I have been blessed to spend the last few years in Roanoke Rapids in a number of roles. And I started as an English teacher. And then as I moved up into central office, things in the state started changing. And so if you've been in your seat as a board member or as a central office person for a while, then you know those words, read to achieve. We have, they have really caused a lot of changes to the work that staff do in classrooms and at the district office, as well as to things that are on your board member agenda with the requirements to report to you guys each year. So you know that some of the questions that Courtney mentioned in the beginning that we were raising our hand or nodding to, those requirements come out of the Read to Achieve legislation. So we have to have universal screeners. Those help us identify students so we can start right at the beginning with giving kids what they need. We don't have to wait a long time to figure out, oh, well, their grades aren't very good. We need to give them some remediation at that point. Read to Achieve required literacy intervention plans to make sure that schools have a systematic approach to improving literacy outcomes. And I'm not sure about in your school district, but in ours, the word system is our one word for the year. We're really focused in on systems and how, to get back to Mr. Mike's point, how can we make sure that schools aren't islands? By using systems that allow common procedures and practices across all of the campuses. And so that really comes back to Read to Achieve in the terms of early literacy. And then individual reading plans to make sure that each of our struggling K-3 readers have a tailored plan that fits for them. Because we know what works for Mr. Noah is not going to work for Mr. Mike. All kids are different. And I think if you talk to the teachers in your building, you're going to see that we have a lot fewer children that come to us with the joy of reading. I mean, I'm seeing some nods out there. There was nothing that my parents could do to make my day more than to take me to the Books A Million or the Walden Books that was in our mall in Roanoke Rapids when I was growing up and just say, get you a book. Diddy, can I get 3? Please, can I get 3, not just 1? But we don't see that. The cell phones that we keep, the iPads that we've given our kids, they've taken that joy that they had in reading and they've put it into a different place. And so our teachers and our administrators really do have more of an uphill battle as they try to figure out what's going to work to get this kid to read when not only do we compete with struggles that they may have inside, but also the motivation and engagement struggles. The next thing I really had to have some come to Jesuses with myself about. I am passionate about reading. And my background is in reading, language, and literacy. I have a master's degree in it. And the philosophical foundation of that was in something called balanced literacy. Balanced literacy focuses on getting kids engaged and loving reading. And it opens up reading and writing and how they go together. And so we at Roanoke Rapids had put a lot of money into staff professional development along those aligned with that philosophy. And then State Superintendent Catherine Truitt came on, and she really appreciated the work that was being done in Mississippi around what they call the science of reading. And so you remember, I'm sure that you all talked about it in board meetings, the same as we did in Roanoke Rapids. We're going to have to put all of our K-5 teachers through what? We signed up to be a later cohort. I'm sorry, Mr. Selenak, I've not been an early adopter of any of the things. Let a different school district work out the kinks. If y'all were an early adopter, thank you for working out the kinks before it came to Roanoke Rapids. But letters fundamentally changes the way that we teach. And it gets, I would say, back to the basics. Are we teaching kids phonics? Do they understand phonemic awareness before they can get to phonics? Do we then it moves into some of the things that we do as good English and reading teachers in terms of vocabulary and comprehension. And those things are still there. It's just the focus at the beginning is different. So letters really shell-shocked our staff. And we did it because, we're rule followers. If the state says to do it, that we're going to do it. We're going to do what we do to the best of our ability. But I remember being in those PLCs along with our teachers and really seeing them grapple with, oh my gosh, I've been teaching for 25 years, doing what the district told me to do, and this is now telling me I've been doing it wrong. And so it's hard for all of us. How many of the kids that have graduated that don't know how to read as well is because of things that we do that we thought were right? So I think once we got past that, and we kept going, and so Roanoke Rapids, like all of you, are your original cohort of folks is done with letters, and now you're just training the new folks that you have that come on. But the idea that we're going to change the philosophy of how we're doing it, that we're going to strengthen core instruction and interventions, and then this is something that we we had a little bit of leeway on, but about the materials that we were using to teach. So I'll say, told you I have a number of roles in Roanoke Rapids, coming up through a teacher, and then I was in charge of instruction. And our philosophy was that we believed that we had great teachers that needed to be able to exercise their professionalism and their autonomy. Right? Solid for great teachers. But now we've got teachers that are coming to us who've not been through teacher school, and they came through, if they did go to teacher school, through during COVID. And so the tools that are in their toolbox are not the same as the ones that came through when our veteran teachers came through. So how do we say, Mr. Noah, you are fabulous. You exercise your professionalism. You go right in and teach that group of kids with that notebook and whatever's in your head. I mean, they can't. So we were at a place that we needed to adopt a curriculum. And so these two things were really, it was like a God wink. They came at the same time. So when we invested in a curriculum, it was easy to make sure that the adoption that we did was aligned with the science of reading. So some of the things when we talk about our data later on, the stars aligned in terms of we had good professional development and aligned with good philosophy, and then we gave all the teachers the same resources so that they could implement core instruction. So I think if you're a board member, if you get back and you talk with your curriculum folks, I'm sure that their story is going to be really similar to this. Again, and I know that you've heard about these things because unfortunately, like everything, all the resources are going to cost money, and it's probably going to exceed that board threshold where they're coming to you to say, please, will you buy this for us? MTSS, we're going to talk obviously a lot about that today, and I know that you've heard that acronym, and I really dislike acronyms because Lord knows we've got a whole bunch of them in education. All right, so what we're talking about with this is multi-tiered systems of support. If your school district adopts or uses the School Board Association's policy manual, then I bet you've got policy 3405 in your policy manual. And so if you have that, it's probably not one that you spend a lot of time on, but it's there. And this guides our work. It mentions in our version, and we didn't change it, we just used the school board's suggested language. It puts MTSS into policy, so we are expected to do it. Sometimes it's hard to see if you're doing it unless you really are getting in there and inspecting it. And we all know that what is respected is what gets inspected. So check out Senior 3405 if it's guided your school district in the way that this one is guided ours. Goodness gracious, it sounds like it's I was like, somebody's having fun. They've made the hallway into a roller coaster, y'all. We might need to pause in this and go check that out. All right, but the two things or three things that we kind of wanted to pull your attention to in policy 3405 is data-driven problem solving, research-based instructional practices for all students, and I think all is so important with the MTSS philosophy, and identifying students at risk of academic failure. So those are the big three prongs of MTSS and policy 3405.
And where Branching Minds comes in to the MTSS work is that's what we do. We are a company that was created by a former classroom teacher to really support the best practice of MTSS. So for us, MTSS is not just those students who need tier 2 or tier 3 intensive or small group support. It's how, going back to the policy that we were looking at, that all students, how we're supporting all students with our core instruction as we're bringing in new curriculums, with our students that need a little bit more support in a small group, and then those kiddos who need more intensive support with one-on-one instruction or intervention. So within Branching Minds, we look at that work across every domain, across academics, across behavior, across attendance. We pull in all of that data into an early warning system so that we're able to proactively understand where is attendance showing up in our literacy concerns. If a student needs to receive intervention but they're not in class, well, they're not going to show those gains that we need to see, right? But what we've found across the board is that data can be really difficult for teachers, for schools, because oftentimes it lives in very siloed systems. We have some data that lives in our student information system, we have some data that lives in our assessments, and Julie was just talking about the universal screeners and the progress monitoring tools that the state has encouraged. Then we have our individual reading plans, those IRPs that we talked about with Read to Achieve. And then we have our attendance data and our behavior data. Those usually live in Infinite Campus or in something like Educator's Handbook. And so getting that full picture of all of the needs that a student has can be really challenging. So that's where Branching Minds really looks at MTSS as that umbrella of student support for all students. And if we look at that policy 3405 that Julie was just talking about and how that is integrated into an MTSS framework, that was a lot of words on the screen, and I'm sure you've read your policy manual. But just to really break it out, we look at MTSS as the operating system. It's how we're making sure that all students are receiving the support that they need. And that it's aligning instruction, intervention, and data across all levels of the district. So going back to our schools being an island, or adults maybe not working in the best interest of students, or not having that collaboration across teams. Oftentimes when we have siloed data and siloed systems, it's really hard to be rowing in the same direction. You know, across our schools, how are we communicating those systems and structures that Julie was talking about? Across our teams, we have really busy days. How are we able to communicate? If I'm the reading teacher and Julie's the math teacher, how am I able to share with Julie what behavior strategies that I've found that have worked for Johnny that maybe she might find to help?
Or if you're the third grade teacher and I'm the fourth grade teacher, how do we share that knowledge so that all of the stuff that we learned that year doesn't get lost when the kid moves across the hallway?
Exactly. Or in the same school year, if a student moves from one school in the district to another school across town, how do we make sure that we're able to pick up on what was happening in that one school and not start all over again? MTSS is also helping us to provide a structure for being proactive in identifying students who are at risk and delivering those targeted and tiered supports. So helping us to proactively not wait until the student is struggling or has poor grades on their report card. But Roanoke Rapids was able to, and I'm not trying to steal your thunder from later in the presentation, but start their plans for their students in the first 10 days of school, because they were able to pull all of that data together. So having all of that extra time to intervene and provide that instruction is critical. And then there's the instructional alignment. So just making sure that all classrooms are using evidence-based practices that match student needs and the state standards and state legislation. Making sure that our schools aren't an island and we're all rowing in that same direction. And Julie, if you have anything to add to any of these. And then database decision making. I touched on this when we were talking about MTSS as the operating system, but how are we making sure that we're being proactive in making sure that our interventions that we're delivering are working, that we're leveraging that universal screener data that we're receiving and taking action on it, and then monitoring those plans that we're putting in place to make sure that they're working. Making sure that they're time bound and we don't have an intervention that's just going on forever. We're checking in to make sure that it's working. And when our data lives in different systems and our data lives all over the place, it can be really hard to see, is what we're doing effective? And is it moving the needle for our students? And then having that collaborative accountability to bring together teachers and administrators and the board around shared goals for student growth and closing those achievement gaps. So within Branching Minds, that's what we do. We help to centralize that data in one place, from that universal screener data, the data in Infinite Campus, attendance, behavior, course performance, progress monitoring data, and then within the platform, we're able to help our school and district partners to proactively understand those student needs before they snowball. So as soon as we get that universal screener data, we're able to help understand which of our kids need core instruction and which might need some more intensive small group work or one-on-one support. And then within the platform, teachers are able to create those individualized reading plans or math plans or behavior plans, deliver evidence-based supports and interventions, support ongoing progress monitoring and making sure is what we're doing effective, and are we seeing that growth? And then at a systems level, when we're looking, especially for a board, being able to evaluate the impact of the work and the return on investment that we're seeing and the efficiencies that are being created for our staff. So I share this because as Julie and Chrissy start talking about the work that they've done in Roanoke Rapids, this is a component of how they were able to break down those silos. And so as we look at the impact of policy 3405 and the board, across my work across the country, I found that for our board members in particular, being able to focus on those outcomes to drive continuous improvement in student achievement, adopting proven materials, Julie was just talking about some of that, making sure that we're selecting and funding evidence-based curricula and tools, strengthening tiered support, so ensuring that we have resources for MTSS and for intervention programs and that we're able to better support our students. And then having the ability to track the progress. Is what we're doing working? Is it effective? And are we seeing the outcomes that we would expect? And are we seeing the return on investment as we're supporting the student needs and seeing that return on student success? Julie, anything you would add to this? All right.
Okay, so, thank you. Okay, where are you all in your MTSS implementation in your districts? So we have an A, which is we're just launching, right? We had to hit the reset button and we're starting over, growing steadily. There's something in place, but we're working to get that unified focus. So again, moving from the island to a system for the district. Well-rooted, this is where you're refining your practices to deepen your impact, or thriving system. This is just like what we do. We wake up and MTSS is how we do business. So if you would like to participate and raise your hand, do you have any A people that said, we're just lunching, we had to reset? Some people, you know, may have left and they've been filled with new positions. Anybody in the A? Okay, thank you. B, growing steadily. Okay. What about C, well-rooted? Okay, and D, thriving system. Okay, thank you. We have a mix in the room. Okay, so about Roanoke Rapids Greater School District, we have about 2,500 students, K-12, small, urban. We have 2 elementary schools, 1 middle school, 1 high school, and 1 early college. We also have a pre-K learning center and an alternative learning placement, and these are just some demographics. There's a little map of where we are, if you'd like to come and visit. Okay.
So we are really excited about Vision 2035 for our school district. And you might be like, okay, well, how did they come up with 2035? So I became superintendent during the 21-22 school year, and we looked at our current strategic plan and vision, and it wasn't exactly where we wanted to be. And so we worked together, and I stole an idea that my board graciously went along with, which was, let's start at the end. So in 21-22, our group of children that was at our Claire Hearn Pre-K Center, when they graduate from high school, it would be the year 2035. And I'll say 5 years ago, it seemed like it was really far away. Now that number keeps on, it gets on real close. It seems like it's gonna be tomorrow. But this little friend in the left-hand corner, she was one of our pre-K students. And so we took some cute little pictures of them in their little graduation outfits, and that looks just like our seniors, and you can't see her at the bottom, but this was one of our graduating seniors for the class of 21-22.
Let me ask a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have the ability to dim the lights on that end so we can see the presentation a little better?
That is a great question. Thank you for asking that.
Sure.
I don't
It looks
know.
like that might be dimmer there, but that is
Is that
great.
okay?
Oh, that's good.
That's a volume switch.
Oh, is that a volume? Yeah,
Unfortunately.
that's perfect.
And us 3 ladies are loud enough, so you probably would have turned us down, just to say,
This is good.
Mr. Noah's gonna be like, you are talking too loud in my ear. You need to calm it right on down.
Thank you.
So our visual for 2035 asked, what do we want kids by the time they get out of each grade level to be able to do? And so you're gonna see that our infographic definitely prioritizes reading. And so for all of my math, science, social studies, CTE people in the crowd, and fine arts, we have not left any of those subjects out of what we planned in the fine details. But I come to instruction with a firm grasp that if you cannot read, you're not going to be able to do those other things very well. And so that's why the thread of reading runs through it. So 2022, my little friend started kindergarten at either Belmont Elementary or Main Elementary School. In 2028, we want her and all, there's our word, all of the children in the 5th grade to emerge reading on grade level. And we want them to begin to engage in deeper learning. Our state tests are hard, but we cannot stop there. We must continue to push our kids because those tests are written for a world that won't exist by the time they get out of high school. And we have to be cognizant of that and start preparing them for a world that we don't know what it looks like. Although ChatGPT is pretty fabulous, and so if it's going to keep getting on better from that, we got to do a better job than what we've been doing. During the middle school years, we want to keep pushing them to continue to read on grade level or higher, but we also in the plan brought in increased emotional and social health, academic skills, and career awareness. I think COVID really showed us how important school is for children's mental health.
Yes.
And I think social media, I'm certainly glad that as a middle school student, I was not having to worry about Snapchat and what all my friends thought about me. And so our kids just are coming to us with so many bigger problems than even what we experienced as kids. And so we have to be intentional about how we're handling all of that. And then 2035, students graduate from RRGSD life ready. So I think the pendulum, it swung for a while when everybody had to go to a 4-year school. Okay. I'm really thankful for my 4-year liberal arts education, but I can't fix anything at my house. And Lord knows I'm gonna pay a lot of money to the people who do. So we must elevate our vocational trades in the same way that we elevate our 4-year college. And so we put that in our plan. So we want children life ready. We want you to be prepared to follow any of the paths that you choose, whether it's a combination or it's one or the other. But we want you ready to succeed in the workplace, in higher education, in the armed services, and in our community. Like, we need to be kind, and we need to have good civic-minded people, regardless of what path that they're choosing. And then we also changed our motto. So on our earlier slide, you saw something about collective accountability as something that comes out of MTSS. We believe in collective accountability, and that's our motto in RRGSD. Together, we succeed. We can't succeed if we work in silos. We can't succeed if the attendance person isn't talking to the math person, isn't talking to the behavior person. We all have to be on one team. And I know that you guys in here, some of you are from similar sized districts, and some of you from districts that are much bigger than mine. I think our problems wind up being the same. Whether you've got 2 elementary schools or you got 100, it's still, at the end of the day, trying to get the people leading those schools to be on the same page and to see it us. They're all our kids. It's not, my kids are better than your kids. That doesn't help us. Because next year somebody's going to move and they're all going to be together anyway. So we might as well bring that rising tide lifting all the boats up. And I think we get to live that out in Halifax County. Because right here we've got Roanoke Rapids, Weldon, and Halifax. And Lord knows we're in the news. I mean, how many times you've seen us? It's 3 districts in that one county. But we know that our kids, they pop from Weldon to Halifax to Roanoke Rapids. And so we have to be on the same page in terms of that. Because if not, then just like in our schools, it's just not helpful to the kids. And that's what we need to be here for. So this is guiding our work. So the idea that we are all in it together. And so that really went along with our implementation of MTSS that I'm going to turn to Christy to talk about specifics.
Okay, so it says Roanoke Rapids MTSS framework, but it's actually North Carolina, and we do follow this. So different states, they may have 6 components, 5, but ours has 6 in our state. And so earlier we were talking about teams, so that's that capacity building and infrastructure. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But again, I just want to point out this is the North Carolina framework. So, okay, so the graphic that you see represents our Devil's Grove from the 23-24 school year. And what we decided to do, we know that we have to have individual reading plans. We use Branch of Minds to develop those plans. So 100% of the students had a plan and they were monitored within the platform. The second thing, early intervention provided within the first 10 days of school. So essentially what would happen is, we would have our BOI, MOI, and then we would have our end of year data. And we say, okay, we have an end of year data, and these kids, this is where they landed. Well, the beginning of the next year, we would wait for our BOI. And we say, once we get that BOI, we're gonna group our students again. And after the first year, 22, 23 is when I came to North Rapids. We said, hey, what if we use our end of year data to start off? Like, we already know, if anything, most of these kids are gonna maybe lose something, and it won't hurt to have that additional support. So we said, we're gonna use our end of year data, and we're gonna create our groups before we go home. Well, 12-month boys don't go home, but before the teachers went home, we're gonna go ahead and put the students in groups. And so that allowed us to intervene within the first 2 weeks of school. Okay, we've been over the handbook, we've done all the things, come on, let's intervene, right? A consistent and objective tiering system. So many times we say, okay, if you went into the classroom, hey, who are your tier 2 students? I might be able to give you a couple of names, right? Primarily maybe grades, but a lot of times we found it was behavior, right? Tier 2. Another thing was attendance, right? Now, the student did need intervention, but they needed support for attendance, not necessarily academics. We didn't know. So we started making sure that we had an objective way. So using those universal screeners, we said, okay, we know that based on the data, this is a tier 2 student, tier 3 student, and then we determine who's gonna serve these students. It's one thing to tier, but then you still have to make sure that you match the students with the appropriate supports. And in order to do that, we said, okay, who's gonna do tier 3? When I came on, we had interventionists. They were funded by ESSA. Then we lost the interventionists, and everybody said, hey, what's gonna happen now? So we are fortunate that we do have a partnership with NC Ed Corps, and we have some tutors, but we said now tier 2 is gonna be provided with the classroom teacher, but that also meant that we had to have the enrichment and intervention blocks into every schedule. So that was something else we did. We made sure that every school's master schedule had that built-in time for those tier 2 interventions or enrichment. Improved core classroom. You cannot intervene on a faulty core. So if you have 50% of your students who need support, that points to a core health. So as we talked about earlier, we did adoption materials. MTSS, a lot of people say, hey, it's making sure that kids get interventions. That is true, but it's only one component. So I always tell people, MTSS is like a cupcake, right? You get your cupcake, that's your tier 1, your core. Your frosting is for your tier 2, and then your cherry on top is for your tier 3. So everybody's gonna at least get the cupcake, right? Now you might not need the frosting, and that's fine. You might get the frosting, you don't need the cherry. But you don't just go and say, here's a cherry for you, and don't give, the frosting or the whipped cream and the cupcake. So everybody has to get core. That's just the basic. Everybody's gonna get that core instruction. Then some people, they need a little more. That might be small groups. And then you have your intensive that might be one-on-one. Okay, so what we found with this new approach, that is in 23-24, our district outpaced the state in literacy growth in every grade, K-3, and every subgroup. And this is based on our Dibble's 8 data. Now again, this was consistent and objective. And so with these, I hope you can see it better. The Carolina blue is beginning of year. The darker or middle blue is middle of the year. And then if you look at our EOY, so we have grades 1, 2, and 3, and you can see that we made our gradual improvements. Okay, so our timeline, scale of implementation. This did not happen overnight. I'm gonna let Dr. Thompson speak about what happened prior to 22-23, and then I'll jump back in.
So the question that Chrissy asked you earlier about where you are in the journey, we have been in all 4 of those at different times. So when I was an assistant principal, We, as a district, moved into implementing MTSS. We were in cohort 3 originally. We showed up to the meetings. We watched the modules. We went back to school and nothing changed. I wonder if that's been part of your journey. Fast forward a few years later, I've moved to central office and I'm now in charge of instruction, and I'm going to meetings just like this, and I'm hearing about MTSS, and we're not where we're supposed to be. I mean, yeah, we checked the boxes, our team watched the modules, but nothing changed. We were not aligned. We had lots of silos. Our kids were not doing well. Our triangle is, I think we've got a slide up here, you've seen it, where you should have everybody getting tier 1, some of the people getting tier 2, a few of the people getting 3. Ours was flipped. Yep, I think, again, especially after COVID, that was probably a lot of our school districts. We were just there before COVID. And so I said, okay, we gotta fix this. But this is during the time when we believed we're gonna do it by pulling up our bootstraps and we're doing everything ourselves. We're gonna figure out a universal screener that doesn't cost too much money. We're gonna make our own interventions. We're gonna do the professional development ourselves. And you know what we did? We killed ourselves and didn't get any further. We restarted and still did not get the improved student achievement. So we've gone through 2 cycles of trying to start MTSS. And then the one good thing that came out of COVID was ESSER money, because we finally got money that didn't have strings attached to it, right? Well, I mean, we did a little bit. But it definitely wasn't coming in the pots like we normally deal with. And so I was able to hire a COVID-19 interventionist for each of our big schools, and I was able to hire Chrissy. And so one lesson that I asked you to take out of this presentation is the right people matter. You have to have the right person leading your MTSS implementation, because they've got to change people's minds. And they've got to change what happens in classrooms when, just like in here, we walk in and we shut the door. If you don't change people's minds and hearts, you won't get the outcomes of MTSS change. And so, please don't take Chrissy away from me, but if you do, I'll give you a business card later and we can arrange, like, she's really wonderful, and you would have to pay her a lot of money, but I'm just kidding. I don't really want to leave, so.
No, but when the ESSER funds went away, people like Chrissy that were doing an amazing job, there are many districts that
Yes.
could not. It's a wonderful thing you were able to.
Yes, and so Chrissy, God bless her soul, she came on to us to direct MTSS. That was it. If you get close to her and you read her name tag now, it says she's the director of MTSS and EC.
Oh.
God bless her soul, she's still stuck with me. I'm not sure what's wrong with her. That might be something that's not in her favor, and that she has agreed to keep doing this, because Lord knows EC's got a whole bunch of problems all on its own, plus trying to get folks to change mindsets on MTSS.
That's passion.
Yes.
That's her.
It's having the right people, right? Got to have great people, and you got to treat them right. So we get to 22, 23, and I say, Chrissy, Shug, I really need you to come on in here and work some magic with these folks. And she did it. And so I'm going to let her start talking about what we did differently in round 3, which is how we got to where we've gotten right now with MTSS.
Okay, so the first thing I did, I started June 1st, is I realized that, well, I talked to Dr. Thompson and I asked her about FAMS and FAMD, and she said, no, I don't think we've done that. I talked to the principals and they're like, what is that? So the FAMS is the facilitated assessment of MTSS at the school level, and the FAMD is the same thing but at the district level. So this was a needs assessment that we participated in, because it's one thing if I come in and say, hey, do you have a universal screener? Hey, are you tiering? The answer is gonna be,
Yeah, we got that.
right?
Yeah, we do. As long as you don't look for it.
But using this tool, it wasn't Chrissy talking, okay? This is developed by the state, and I'll tell you this, it aligns nicely with our school improvement plans. So the state has created a crosswalk. So when you look at the FAMS and you look at the FAMD, there's a crosswalk that you can say, hey, the items on the FAMS align with these indicators, so it's not double work. MTSS is what we do. It's not another thing on the plate, it's the actual plate. Because we are improving outcomes, all domains for students. So we participated in the FAMS. At each school, I said, okay, what is something that we can do? what is something that we can do for next school year? Let's look at our results. And everybody had something different, right? Some people said, you know what? We do need to tier our students better. We need to be able to put some names. When we say tier 2, we need to know which students, what they need in the support. Again, we're not where we need to be, but we're starting to come up with some action items for the following school year. Team instructors. I went to the schools and I said, okay, who's on your MTSS team? This person, that person. I go to the person, they're like, I'm not on that team. So we knew.
Once you figure out what the team was named.
Right.
Because I think we had lots of teams, I'm like, the what?
Right, so we had to work on some naming conventions. I created a little document that had acronyms and said, hey, when I say this, this is what I'm talking about. But we had team instructors. Now, I didn't pick the team members, but I said, you probably should have a person who, and then they had different roles. So, okay, we talk about behavior, attendance. In our district, we have COLs, community outreach liaisons, so we don't have social workers. So I said, okay, that person probably needs to be at the table because they do a lot with attendance, right? Then we had an administrator. So sometimes it's the principal, sometimes it's an AP, sometimes it's both. And then we had the school counselor, right? Because we don't want to have these different subsets. Okay, the school counselor is just meeting with COLs, and then you have a classroom teacher, instructional coach. So we had representation on the team. We said, let's call this team MTSS. And as Dr. Thompson mentioned, prior to that, the teams were called different things. The help team.
The wraparound team.
Wraparound. I mean, there are so many. Now, essentially, it's a problem-solving team. Now, if I went to a meeting and the agenda said wraparound, we were still doing the work. But eventually, everybody got on board and we started saying MTSS. Data collection. So, believe it or not, we didn't have anything that people could share. So Ms. Kim, she'd have her spreadsheet or her notebook or however she wanted to have her data. And then this Towner, she had an Excel document. And people are just, oh, I brought it, oh, I made a mistake and deleted it, or it's in my other notebook. So we said, hey, can we all put it in this platform and branch your minds? And the beautiful thing is, they started saying, wow, now I can look. Last year, Miss Rebecca had Chrissy, and I see that she tried this intervention. It didn't work, so I'm probably not gonna start there, right? How many of you all, if you take a painkiller, you have something? If I said, okay, oh, I have a headache, I might have a Bayer, I might have Advil, Tylenol. Most people already know which one they want, right? It was the same thing. That's how teachers were. This is the first thing that I like teaching you, so I like this intervention, I'm gonna try it. But it might not work, it might not get you the results. But having it in branch of minds, you're able to look and say, oh, this was effective. I think I'm gonna try that again. So again, collecting the data in one place, it helped with the vertical alignment, but it also helped people like the school counselor to be able to see what has happened, or the COL, the principal. A lot of times the principals, if they have 50 teachers and everybody's sending a spreadsheet, you gotta look at it, but now they can go and branch your minds and pull it up.
And then also, wanna give a shout out, like Miss Martin is wonderful, but if you don't know Courtney Kelly, she has been in North Carolina for a long time. Those of us that use Case 21, back in the day, that's where I met Courtney, and she's fabulous. And when you know good people, and they will tell you the truth about a product and not just sell you something to be selling it, hold on to those folks. So Kelly met me at one of these meetings and she said, Julie, I'm working for this new company. I think this stuff would really help you out. And she is exactly right, because all the things that Chrissy's talking about, that's my spreadsheet. I'm not gonna give it to Mr. Noah. I'm keeping it. I've worked real hard about that. I'm not giving him my stuff. It's true. Teachers are possessive humans. And we want to be all glorious and share things, but at the end of the day, oh, it's really my spreadsheet. I love it. Please don't mess it up. So, branching minds remove that temptation. Branching minds allowed us to give people the resources to make the work easier. It allowed us to be able to inspect it in one place. If all of you have your own version of Google Sheet, Excel, handwritten stuff in a notebook, I'd spend all day trying to get you to figure out where it was and meet you at your planning time. Now, and branching minds, I can go in when it's convenient to me and see, did y'all do what you were supposed to do with it? Where are the kids going? And it removes that time thing about me having to coordinate with your schedule to get it.
And, yes,
So what you're talking about with branching lines, is that almost like your data warehouse?
yes, it has that warehouse functionality. Everything is there. There's integration with whatever this is. So now it's Infinite Campus, but whether it was Power School or Infinite Campus, that information is there. And again, when you start looking, so if you go over to,
As well as like iReady or whatever benchmarks and universal screeners that you're doing, it pulls from there. So it takes all of the different things that live, that we interact data, and it pulls it together, and then it does groupings. So it's doing, I mentioned ChatGPT a little bit earlier, right? It was functioning like that in terms of pulling stuff together and shooting it out a long time ago in a much safer way.
And helping your teachers to take action on the data.
Yes.
I think that's the piece that everybody, since COVID, and we've talked a lot about COVID and ESSER dollars and how much money was just out there. I have not met a school district across this country that is not drowning in data right now.
Mm-hmm.
You have data on everything. What is missing, and a lot of districts have data warehouses now, or ways to just visualize data. What's missing is the way to take action on the data. To be able to proactively figure out these kids need icing or these kids need a cherry with their cupcake, and then make sure that we're putting it in place and is it working? And if not, like Chrissy said, change it up and let's figure out what works.
And you can be creative with your funding sources because of the amazing stuff that Branching Minds does. So one of the ways we were able to pay for it initially was because of the fabulous intervention library that it has. And so we can pull from funding sources like textbooks that have digital resources as an allowable use to be able to do that. We could do ESSER when we started. Now it has become the way that we do things. And so now it's one of those things that when times get hard and money's got to get cut, this is staying on the list of things that we keep.
and so when we think about, one of the things I did, and it's not here, is created a district-wide resource inventory. What do we have? So we talk about resource accountability. We looked at everything and said, what are you doing for Tier 1? So for all students, what are you doing for reading? What are you doing for math? And then we found that we had some gaps. We had some gaps. This school was using this product, this school was using this product. They have it, but they haven't logged in. And so we did some cleaning up. We said, what things do we have that do the same things, and which one can we get the most bang for our buck? Where's the data to support that this is providing the return of investment? And believe it or not, we were able to clean some things up. And we said, okay, nobody's used, I'm not gonna name a product just in case it's one of your favorites. Nobody's used this in 2 years, but we're renewing every year. So we were able to do some fiscal management things. And again, Tier 1, we said we had this instructional framework, so every student's gonna get some phonics instruction. Every student's going to get some comprehension, like at particular grade levels, and we matched it up with the resources. Again, I talked about a lot of these with the I&E time, letters, wonders. We had some amazing vetting with that. And if you look at 25-26, now we're focusing on our growth through our data-driven decisions. So we're still continuing to make decisions. Just for the sake of time, I want to talk about some of our attainment structures. We have an executive director of instructional services. We have our Office of Early Literacy Specialist that's provided by DPI, instructional coach, and this year we have MCLs in our elementary schools, so they don't have an instructional coach. They have a director of MTSS and a superintendent. That is one of our district level MTSS, because we don't just have school-based MTSS teams, we also have district level MTSS team. And then again, tiered supports, what's happening? The core literacy instruction is happening, that's for everyone. Tier 2, we're using the standard treatment protocol. Now that took time. The standard treatment protocol is saying, what happens when I have a student who is struggling with X, what's the first thing I should do, right? Like triaging, right? You go, you have something going on, they're going to ask you specific questions. And so we said if 75% of the students are benefiting from this intervention, we're gonna say, the intervention works, right? So it might be an implementation issue for the other 25%, or it might be that the students need something else. If you get sick and you need an antibiotic and they say take it twice, 14 times a day, if you take it every other day for 7 days, then that may not be the antibiotic, right? It might be the implementation, you didn't follow the instructions. So a lot of times we have to do some problem solving to figure out, is this intervention working, or is it something else? If the kid's not there, then of course, we don't know that it's the intervention being ineffective. It could be that the kid isn't there. And then we have our tier 3, and that's for students who need our most support. This is something that happens with our team and structures. Again, district level, monthly literacy coach meetings. Those are the people who attend. Then we have monthly MTSS implemental meetings. You see those people. And then school-based, the training happens at least twice a year. How much time do we have? 5 minutes. Okay, again, this is more about the functionality, and Courtney can talk to you about that, what that looks like. And this is just our intervention and usage report. So remember I said we figure out what's working? Mm-hmm. Well, in Branch of Minds, we run this report and we see how many times it was used and the growth that the students made or didn't make. So I don't have to guess and say, yeah, most of my kids did well after I used that intervention. I just run this report and I can say, U-Fly, oh, we're keeping that. We're gonna use this U-Fly. Haggerty's, oh, we got great gains from that. So again, this report is in Branch of Minds, and it's based on the input from the teachers. They have little actions, to-dos. Did you meet with Chrissy today for 20 minutes? Right, you're supposed to meet with her 4 times a week for 20 minutes. Yes, no, maybe so. So that's where that data comes from.
And our administrators can use it to guide evaluation meetings with teachers as well. So instead of waiting for nieces to come out with growth into the next school year, we can have the conversations along the way while they're meeting with them for their PDPs. Again, what gets inspected gets respected.
So this is, again, capacity and infrastructure. We talked about the rostering already and using SIS, and reinforcing those standard treatment protocols. This is just some of the information, just to know that what we're doing is working. And now our secondary schools are like, yep, we're gonna do that too, because they are reaping the benefits of seeing things in Branch of Minds that they didn't put in, but they can still make decisions about students. Again, we talked about this triangle for the first time since the pandemic. We actually tier our students based on the recommended percentages. So our triangle is no longer inverted. We truly had, at the end of last school year, a triangle that looked representative of an ideal MTSS triangle. I was teary-eyed at the meeting.
We are really proud of this work and really thankful again for Branch and Minds in terms of helping guide our work. And I think you've heard me, I'm kind of folksy about stuff, but you gotta have the right people, you gotta have the right resources, and you gotta have the right professional development. And when you have those 3 things, then you can make magic happen for kids. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Did you encounter any challenges with getting data entry into the system on the interventions? Like assessment data feels like I get it, but when you started talking about intervention, like accountability to know which interventions were used so that you can assess their quality, like was that something new to do that data entry for the teachers?
So, not really. They were doing it, but they had their own spreadsheets.
Right.
That stuff.
Yeah, so it was just about teaching them how to use the platform and then making sure that they were inputting the data.
Right, they were in groups, so they already knew, like during their POCs, they would work together to say, hey, we're gonna all try this, and let's come back and talk about the results.
And today we focused on early literacy, but MTSS is really a philosophy that guides our work as a district. I think when we get into all students and we get into the idea about problem solving, like this problem is big, it's a wicked problem, but if we all work together and we're all rowing in the same direction, we believe that we can solve it. And then making sure that we're putting into play the plans that are generated in those, and then admitting, hey, this plan didn't work. We tried this intervention with this kid and it did not work, so we need to try something different. Works the same in whatever issue we're encountering in the district.
And we've seen literacy success and math success and success with behavior across districts of all sizes. Roanoke Rapids is on the smaller end of districts that we partner with. Although I think our smallest partner has 35 students and our largest has over 350,000 students. So we really span the gamut. But in all of those districts, especially when we look at literacy, I just pulled literacy examples because of this session, we've seen dramatic improvement in reading performance with our district partners just from having visibility into their data, de-siloing things, and being able to take action on the data, really surfacing the best practice of MTSS. These ladies did not give themselves the credit for leading the state in early literacy growth with their DIBELS data in 2023, but they saw significant gains. Yes. We've also seen strong growth with Orange County schools over in Hillsborough. They also saw significant increases in students scoring above benchmark, and the number of students scoring well below benchmark dropped dramatically. In Charlotte-Mecklenburg, we saw historic growth. We saw a statistically significant correlation between the number of educators who were logging in and doing the work in Branching Minds and the improvement that they saw in their student outcomes. One of my favorite sweet schools was rated a D at the start of our partnership. In this news article that was published in the Charlotte Observer in September, they've moved up to a B. They had a 10x growth score this year. They have an amazing leader. Like Julie said, it's the people. But they've been able to collaborate and scaffold that data-driven decision-making. And across the district, they've seen significant growth, significant increases in the number of students meeting or exceeding growth. And this is for that sweet school I was just talking about, Tuckasegee Elementary School. This was last year, not even the data that was in that Charlotte Observer article. But they saw last year 21% of their students meeting or exceeding growth. And this year they had a 10x growth score. So we're really proud of our partners. They're the ones doing the work. We're just the tool that's really helping to drive the work and help bring it all together in one place and help you take action on it.
And if any of you have questions, please find either me or Christy or send us an email or give us a phone call. We'd love to tell you more about our experience with Branching Minds. Really, we cut it straight. We wouldn't be up here with Courtney if we didn't believe in this program and believe that it was worth telling you guys about.
So your emails are on the